Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Movie Goodness, where we examine life through cinema here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and the day has come. The day has finally come that we talk about a film, that we talk about the film that changed my life forever back in 1985. A movie that still to this day gives me all the joy, all the excitement, and all of the splendor of movie watching. Something that I've been doing since a little tight, as long as I can remember. But there was one film that stood out that just gripped me from the moment it touched the movie theater. Yes, it is none other than Barry Gordy's The Last Dragon, which came out 40 years ago on March the 22nd, 1985. And it's weird. It's like it was destined to be. I had already scheduled this episode for this week, the months ago. Reason being, it's my birthday. Today is my birthday. And I said, for as a birthday present for myself, I'm going to talk about the film that got me in love with movies. That just gripped me from the opening scene to the very last credit that rolled. And it is The Last Dragon. And doing research and rewatching the film for this show, I found out that it was released on March the 22nd. It just so happened to be released 2 days after my birthday. Um, I, I mean, it was meant to be. I can't put it no other way. But this is a film. If you're in my generation or even before, this is the film that everybody knew. I don't care if you're black, white, Hispanic, whatever race, whatever ethnic group that you're in, whatever creed that you're in, whatever. This is a film that everybody knew. We would go to school and recite lines for this movie. Everybody watched it. Everybody. I mean, it's weird how this movie unified everyone, connected everyone. It hit with everyone. It was the weirdest thing, you know. Now, granted, I was only 6 years old when this movie came out, but I can't think of a movie that came out before this that unified everyone like this. And honestly, I can't think of a movie after this that has unified people like this. To the point whereas, honestly, you can recite every line from this movie. When I rewatched it the other day, I was sitting there and I'm just spewing out lines, and I realized that I know every single line of dialogue in this film. One of the many reasons is because, of course, we watched it a million and one times. And I'm saying we because if anybody grew up in the 80s, this movie came on, I forgot which channel it came on. It was one of those local stations. It either came on after Soul Train or after Kung Fu Theater or Creature Feature. It was one of those, but every Saturday it felt like The Last Dragon came on. And of course you watched it. You it doesn't matter what part it was on, you stopped and watched it. And I know every line of this movie. I know every kung fu move of this film. And that brings me to another point about this movie. How much of an impact, and I mean this in a literal sense, how much of an impact this movie had. I think back of how many times me and my cousin sat there and tried to emulate every move Leroy Green was making in that film. You know, the kicks, the little Matrix style hand movement in slow motion that he did, where he had the millions of arms coming out. It was the coolest special effect we ever saw in our lives at up to that point, and the glow. And so we emulated that. And us being young and stupid, we didn't realize that, you know, that these were actual black belts. Well, at least Mac was. But these were actual professionals. They didn't really kick each other. They didn't really punch each other. Uh we didn't take it. We went in just all out and kicked each other in the stomach, kicked each other in the face. It was real trying to be Bruce Leroy because everybody wanted to be Bruce Leroy. Nobody wanted to be show enough. Now, as you get older, at least I do, I'm more show enough than I am Bruce Leroy. But that's neither here nor there. But yeah, so many bumps and bruises and teeth getting knocked out of your mouth from watching The Last Dragon. The Last Dragon, man, is a film that encapsulates the early to mid 80s. If you have children, if you're around my age in your 40s, mid 40s, or late 40s, and you grew up in this era, and you've had kids later in life, and you tell your kids about the 80s and how it was the greatest decade ever, and they look at you like you're stupid, and like my children do. If you want to show them what the 80s was, this is the perfect movie to put on to show them what this is a time capsule. This movie unintentionally takes everything about the 80s and sticks it into this 90-minute film. This I mean, as far as the styles, the clothes, the music, the texture of the film, everything about this is 80s. Everything, the hairstyles, I mean, everything just drips 80s. It is the most dated movie ever made. I mean, dated beyond dated, but I don't care. Like I said, watched it earlier, a couple of days ago, and I was just drawn back to that time, of a simpler time. At least it was for me because I didn't have bills and I didn't have pressure of work and all this other stuff. The good life. Mama fed me, uh, daddy clothed me. I ain't had to worry about all that back then. But now life is lifing. But it drew me back to that time, and man, it was just so much fun. I remember sitting in front of the TV about a foot from the television and watching watching this movie. As far as me, remember, I vaguely remember going to the theater to see this. I want to say I went to the theater to see this with my sisters and my brother, and we all went to go see it. I really do think that happened, but I'm not 100% so that it happened. But I feel that it did. And every time I wanted to call up my sisters and my brother to ask them, I forget. I always forget. When I talk to them, it never pops in my mind. And I just assume at this point. But I believe that we did go to the theater to go see this, at least the first time that I saw it. And man, it was a matter of fact, now that I say that, I do remember walking out of Joy Cinema City 8. It was a movie theater in the town that I grew up. It was the dollar show that we called it because you go see movies for $1 back then. Go figure. Good times, people. Good times. But I remember going to that theater to go see this. So yes, I did go see it in the theater. But of course, I was very young. I was 6 years old. But by the time I was 7 or 8, it was on TV nonstop. And you watch movies now once or twice and you feel that's enough. Especially these days, movies are really, man. For example, went and saw Captain America, Brave New World a couple of weeks ago. Saw it once. I don't need to see it again. I have no desire to see that movie again. Novocaine. Just saw that this past weekend. I thought it was a fun little movie. I have no desire to see that again, even though I enjoyed the movie. I'm good. I don't need to see it again. But movies that came out in around this time in the 80s and going into the 90s, it's a different feel. It's more of I don't know. It's just something timeless about it. Something precious about those type of movies. And The Last Dragon, it just stands out to me. I remember my cousin had called me about a year or so ago. Yeah, same cousin that we were kicking each other in the stomach back in the day, but he had called me and like, man, you know, The Last Dragon's on Netflix? And I don't know, man. It's like he told me I won the. It's like he called me and told me I won the lottery. You know that I have $80 million in the bank. You know, just come down here and pick it up. That's how that phone call felt. And it was on one. It was either Netflix or Max or something. I forgot which streaming service it was on. But yeah, it was the greatest joy when he called and told me that. And sure enough, I went to that service and I watched it. I watched it. But let's get into the production or the pre-production, how this movie came to be. What led to this cult classic that we know as The Last Dragon? Well, it was based on an original screenplay by Louis Vanoska. I believe that's how you say his last name. And he was a struggling actor and a dancer who, you know, he got tired around this time. He got tired of being cast as gang member number one, number two, or whatever in every urban film made in New York. And so he wanted to change it up. He wanted to do something different. He got tired of acting. So he wrote this screenplay and it was purchased by TriStar Pictures for Motown Productions and was quickly approved for production, which began in New York City on April the 16th, 1984. This was the first acting role for Timac, who was a 19-year-old black belt who learned how to act during the making of this movie. And look, when we go through the actual review of this film, it's gonna be biased. I'm telling y'all straight up, flat out, period. Right now, it's gonna be it's gonna be a biased review, because this movie has I don't know, man. It just holds a special place in my heart. So it's not gonna be much criticism, but I will say this: Timac's acting is the worst. It wasn't even acting. I don't even know if you can classify it as acting. And so to learn that tidbit, actually, I didn't even have to research that. I knew that by watching the film. I knew that when I was 6 years old, sitting in the theater watching the movie, that he didn't know how to act. He got this role because he was a good-looking guy, 19 years old, and he was a black belt in karate. Okay, I get it. You know, that'll never happen these days. But back in the 80s, sure, if you can throw a kick, come on, stand in front of this camera. And they gave him a lot to do in this movie. You know, they gave him a lot to do. Now, I feel, once again, we're going to touch in more on it when we review it, but I think the stuff that he was given, he did a really good job. You know, all things considered, to say he couldn't act, he never acted before in his life, never been on a film set, he never desired to be an actor. And he did a lot because there was a lot of heavy lifting in this movie, but there's neither here or there. He learned how to act, and I use learned very loosely while on the set of this film. Now, with all that being said, in hindsight is 2020. It wasn't like Timac was he beat out millions of people for it. Well, he did beat them out, but it wasn't like he outacted a lot of people. Once again, I understand it was 1984 when they were making this movie. And these names weren't names in 1984. I get it. But once again, hindsight, hindsight being 2020, here are some names who lobbied hard for the role of Bruce Leroy Green in The Last Dragon. Wesley Snipes, Billy Blanks, yes, Tybo, he lobbied hard. Mario Van Peebles, Lawrence Fishburne, And according to the articles I read, the one actor who was, I mean, he tried, he broke into auditions. He was doing all type of stuff to try to land this role as Bruce Leroy. It was none other than Denzel Washington. Was he would try? This was one of the most coveted roles at the time for young black actors. Now, with that being said, there weren't many. I would go as far to say none. So, of course, this was a juicy project. Not looking for an award because you knew you weren't going to get an award for this film, but to actually lead a film, a black actor to lead a film, unheard of in 1985. It was unheard of. Yeah, it was happening. You had movies sparingly coming out where you get a lead here or there. Definitely not as much as you see now. And if you really want to be honest, look around. Just go walk past a movie theater and look at the posters. And you tell me how many black actors are leading films, Captain America aside. How many more black actors are leading films in the multiplex right now? Not that many. But ultimately, the role went to Timac. And hey, who knows? Maybe if Lawrence Fishburne got this role, we don't get to see him in the Matrix. You know, it's not as exhilarating when we see him do what he do in the Matrix, you know, because we seen him do it in 1985 in The Last Dragon. Maybe Denzel Washington don't have this storied career, you know, this award just filled career that he has now if he had starred in The Last Dragon. Who knows? Maybe Wesley Snipes never go on to be Blade if he stars in The Last Dragon, so on and so forth. We don't know. We don't know. It could have all worked out for the good, and I think it all worked out for the good anyway, because all of these actors who were just breaking down the doors trying to get this role went on to have storied careers, definitely bigger than Timac. So, hey, you know, kudos for them. You know, even though they didn't get the job, they still got the career. Instead, Vanity, Vanity, Vanity. This was my all-time crush. Still is. God rest her soul, Denise Matthews. And she still, I mean, bruh, this was the first movie. I was 6 years old. I was 6 years old, and I knew I wasn't gay. I knew when I saw her, I instantly fell in love. There was no questions. I knew what I wanted. This woman, oh my God, she is still. I mean, bruh, uh, like I said, watching it again, I'm like, man, she is just perfect. She was just perfect. I mean, just beauty personified was Vanity. And at this time, she was actually starring alongside Prince in Purple Rain. Well, she left that production. Her and Prince had a falling out. That's how Apollonia ended up being in that role for Purple Rain. Vanity went on to star in or co-star in The Last Dragon. And good. Good. I accept that because man, this God, I love her. I think I gushed about her for about 10-15 minutes when I did my uh, uh Action Jackson review. Um as the moment when I realized I loved her because we had a frontal scene, full frontal scene, when she showed her breasts in that movie. But in this one, this is when I fell in love with her. I crushed on her hard. I cried like a baby when she passed away some years back. And oh man, you want to talk about crushed. I was crushed. Seriously crushed. Once again, RIP to a queen. The soundtrack to this film. The soundtrack is still a soundtrack that I listen to this day. I still listen to it. It's in my queue list on Spotify. I love this soundtrack. You know, you had The Barge on this Rhythm of the Night. That was a banger written by Diane Warren, believe it or not. Diane Warren, who has been nominated for like 50 Academy Awards and haven't won one, which is a crime against nature. I don't understand how Diane Warren has yet to win an Academy Award, but that's neither here nor there. She wrote Rhythm of the Night. You had Stevie Wonder on this soundtrack with Upset Stomach. You had The Glow. You got that glow. You remember that fire, fire. Every time I hear that song, every time I hear that song, I pop the Bruce Leroy pose when he does the arms in the air waving thing in slow motion. Every time. Seven Heaven, performed by Vanity for this soundtrack. It's just a hodgepodge. You know, this film is co-produced by Motown, so of course you're gonna get a banging soundtrack here. This movie was produced on a budget of $10 million. In 1985, that's a nice chunk of change. You know, because that's a nice chunk of change for films these days, $10 million. But it had a $10 million budget, and it was a hit. It grossed $33 million at the box office, but critics tore it apart back in 1987. I think 50% of the, no, 58% gave it positive, but the rest, no. They torched it. They torched it. So it's safe to say it was mixed, but it was torched. But this movie, it has become a cult classic, deservingly so, because it is an 80s wet dream. This is a 1980s film personified, The Last Dragon. Let's jump into the review of this cult classic. This 40-year-old film. 40 years, people. The Last Dragon, also known as Berry Gordy's The Last Dragon. It is an American martial arts film directed by Michael Schultz. And Michael Schultz, at this point in his career, he had directed a few films. And believe it or not, I did not know he was black until I was doing research for this show. I'm thinking Michael Schultz. I thought maybe he was German or Polish or something like that. I didn't know that he was a black man, but he's black. And up to this point, he had directed Cooley High, Car Wash, Which Way Is Up, Bustin' Loose. You know, he has directed some pretty cool films. After this, after The Last Dragon, he went on to direct even more pretty cool films. He directed Crush Groove. He directed Living Large, Disorderlies, and the most recent thing that I saw he did was in 2004, Woman Thou Art Loose, that TD Jakes movie that I never seen, but he directed that. But I believe he retired. I think he's still alive and kicking to this day. He's 86 years old and living his life. God bless him. But this film stars Ty-Mac, and I'm thinking I'm saying his name right. Ty-Mac or Ty-Make, whatever, however it goes. But he stars in this film as Bruce Leroy, Vanity, Julius Curley as Sho'nuff. And in case you have been living under a mountain for the past 40 years, the premise of The Last Dragon: in New York City, a young man searches for a master who obtains the final level of martial arts mastery known as the Glow. Where do I start off with this review? Let's start off first and foremost of my impressions of it, you know, so you can know what to expect going forward. I'm fully aware. I think I've stated it a few times here. I'm fully aware that this is a cheesy movie. I'm fully aware that this is full 80s cheese. And 80s cheese is like no other cheese. There's a level to this, man, that it cannot be matched. And yes, normally movies like that are dated. And this movie is dated, of course. Yes, you can fully see that this is a 1985 film. Fully see. There's nothing here that you can take and put in 2025 America and think it will pass as 2025 America. It's no it's no possible way. But it's unbelievably exciting to watch this movie. It is unbelievably fun how this movie is laid out for you. Everything is laid out, but not explained to you like you're 5 years old. You know what I'm saying? It's not like that. There's actual depth to this movie that makes it, I don't know, more than just a cheesy little stupid little Saturday afternoon movie. It's more to it. You have stories of family. You have stories of perseverance. You have stories of resilience. You have story of pursuing your dream, going after the love of your life. Falling in love, and all of that stuff is. There's more too, but all of that stuff is, and belief in yourself. That's the number one thing. Belief in yourself. And this film was done in such a cool way. It was really displayed in such an exciting way here. Let's begin with the acting. Let's get that out the way. Let's start with Taimak as Bruce Leroy Green. I think he did a good job. He did a good job. I mean, no, it wasn't an Academy Award worthy performance. No, I don't see him in any other thing because he wasn't in any other thing. The only thing I've seen him in, aside from The Last Dragon, was on an episode of A Different World, where he played the abusive boyfriend to Freddy on the show when he beat up Freddy. That was the only time, or hit her. It didn't beat, well, same thing. And that was the only other time. And I'm like, man, Bruce Leroy's a douche. I was so hurt by that. I was really, because it was such a turn from what we know. This meek and humble individual from this movie, and to really go 180 on A Different World crushed my heart. It really. I think I cried. I probably cried for Freddie because I loved her character, but I definitely cried because, man, that was my hero, man. It was a black superhero. Like I said, we didn't have this back then. We didn't have Black Panther and Sam Wilson and all this here. All we had was Bruce Leroy. That's the only hero I had to look up to. And just like that, it was dashed away on an episode of A Different World. But you didn't see him in nothing else. At least I can't recall. And it's understandable when you know the backstory. He's a martial artist. He was not an actor. Acting wasn't his thing. That wasn't something he was pursuing in life, It's just something he happened upon. And, good on him. He did the best he could. And he honestly you can honestly see him doing the best he can do in this movie. The scene where Sho'nuff and his crew destroyed Daddy Green's pizza, and he comes in after the fact, and the devastation and hurt and pain that's on his face when his little brother Richie is telling him it's his fault. Because you don't stand up to Sho'nuff. You kissed his Converse and all this other stuff, and the tears running out of his face. I was like, man, that's acting. That's acting. That's why I was like, man, how did they get him to that point on set? Because this dude is not an actor. You could, all the rest of the movie aside, the way he delivers lines and all that other stuff, yeah, that's fine. But in that scene, like, but he can do something. He just got to work with somebody. But it never it never came to be, unfortunately. But good on him. You know, he still has this. It was a he's 1,000. He bats 1,000 when it comes to films. You know, he got up to the plate once, knocked it out the park, and retired. And that was that. That did cool. I think he did a decent job. Now, do I think Denzel could have killed? Yeah, of course. Lawrence Fishburne, absolutely. Wesley Snipes would have demolished this role. Wesley Snipes, Bruce Leroy would have been it would have been taken to a whole nother level. I believe if Wesley Snipes would have been cast in this role. But we didn't get those gentlemen. We got Timac, and I think he did a pretty decent job. Vanity. Vanity, once again, at this point, wasn't a full blown actress. And you can make the argument, it never was as far as her acting. To be honest with you, around this time, I didn't care how she acted. I really didn't care. Um, was it a great performance? No, no, it wasn't great. It was the 80s. And so normally the female co-lead in the film was the damsel in distress, the ditzy girl, and all this here, and that's what she was. You know, um, there was a level of strength to her character that was kind of foreign around this time, and so that was good to see. But I'm not going to say that she was the best actress on the set. The best actor or actress on this set was Julius Curry as Shonuff. That dude, bro. That dude, I never disliked him as a villain. Never. That goes back to 85. Never disliked him because I enjoyed him so much. He was so funny, yet so menacing. This was a character you believed could whoop Leroy Green. There was no doubt in it. It wasn't like, oh man, what he's gonna pull out of his hat. Well, he's had to cheat to win, get his guys to jump in and all this. No, 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 no. Well, number one, he towered over Bruce Leroy. Towered over. So that was that. Then his attitude, the way he walked in the room, he just had it, man. It was, God rest his soul, Julius Curry did an excellent job as Shonuff. One of the best movie villains ever. Yes, I'm throwing that out there. I'm not saying he is the best, people. I know you don't come at me. I'm saying he's one of the best because he controlled every scene, every situation he was in. Never. Well, not never. It took to the very end, and the man had to manifest the glow of the Holy Spirit or whatever and, and defeat him. But throughout the film, he controlled every situation that he was in. From the scene in the movie theater, from the scene when he interrupted the dojo and the class, the scene when they were taking applications for these bounty hunters or whatever, all of that, every scene he popped up in, he just chewed up the scenery, and you needed it. Yes, cheesy, because no human being is going to walk around with shoulder pads and I'm talking football shoulder pads and with his chest out and shaded sunglasses or whatever they were, and this just freaked out, blown out hair afro, whatever you want to call it. It was a look. It was a look. But in 1985, you didn't blink twice at it. You didn't blink twice because, man, the 80s. But I loved to this day, still love that character, Julius Curry. God rest his soul. He passed away a few years back as well. I think he killed it in this role. Our antagonist here, played by Christopher Murray or Murney, as Eddie Arcadian. He was fine, he was fine. I liked his character. He was a little manic and crazy. His plot or his motivation throughout the film was kind of silly. It was very comic booky and once again cheesy. Eh, unrealistic. Yes, 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 yes. But it was all right for the movie. It fit in this film, you know. But yeah, he was all right. Faith Prince as his girlfriend or whatever she was, Angela. I liked her role here. This is the first time. Like I said before, not only did we see Timac, but first time we got to see Ernie Reyes Jr., who is still working today. I just seen a movie he was in, I don't know, maybe a month or so ago. I'm like, man, this dude's still, he's still kicking it. No pun intended. He's still out here working, and still kicking butt. This was his first film. I think he was 12 years old when he made this. His first role as the little kid nobody expected to be a beast, and he was a beast, and he still is. You know, what was that movie with The Rock? He was in The Rundown, and he whooped The Rock a new one, man. and this is when The Rock was just getting into Hollywood, just getting into the movie thing. And The Rock was, you know, he's coming from wrestling. He's this intimidating figure and all this here. Ernie Reyes Jr. tore The Rock apart in their little fight scene. It was for comedy and whatnot, but it was a cool little scene, and he got the best of him throughout that fight. Um, Keisha Knight Pullen, first time we got to see her. You know, Rudy Huxtable herself. This was her first role in anything. She was a little bitty thing. She was like 4, 5 years old when they made this. She plays Bruce Leroy's little baby sister. We also see Carl Anthony Payne for the first time. He was the kid in the pizza shop, just a little cameo. You don't know who Carl Anthony Payne is? Martin. It's Martin. He was on that show for many, many years. But the shocker that I didn't realize until I watched it again 2 days ago, Chaz Palminteri is in this movie as a small cameo. He's a little hood, a little gangster in this movie that gets beat up by Bruce Leroy, the one that was trying to kidnap Laura when she was coming out of the studio or whatever. And I'm like, wait, that's Chaz Palminteri. I'm like, man, that's crazy, man. All these little well, you say cameos, but they weren't at the time. They were just actors trying to get roles, you know. But now you look back and revisit its history, and it's like, man, these are some prominent actors. William Macy is in this movie. He has a small little role, you know, and you barely recognize him in this movie. But it's cool to look at these actors early on. I love going back and watching old movies and seeing actors in little small roles that right now they're the kings and queens of Hollywood, you know, making 30-40 million dollars a movie. Probably only made $30 for their role in the movie back then. But yeah, the acting here, look, you're not watching this for the acting, so it's hard to really gauge it. But for the sake of this review, yeah, it's weak. The acting is weak, but I didn't care. Didn't care. The action was phenomenal. You know, it really encapsulated the vibe of the kung fu films and karate films of that era. You know, with the just pure martial arts. Because let's not forget, this is pre visual effects, CGI, and all this here. You know, you didn't have digital doubles pulling off these acrobatic stunts and whatnot. That wasn't the thing back then. Whatever you saw on screen was 9 times out of 10 really pulled off. And so all of that stuff, you know, that we seen in the Matrix that we love. I mean, it has its place. I'm not poo-pooing on it, but only when it's done too much. But it didn't need it here, you know, because that's not. This was grounded, you know, and you know, all glow aside. having the glow. But it was still grounded and exciting, and it was just a joy to watch all of these young actors, especially not just Bruce Leroy, not just Show Enough going at it, but the school, the students that he had that had that epic showdown at the Seven Heaven Studios, uh, where Bruce Leroy was being jumped by these hoods and all this here, and they all rushed in to the rescue. Awesome, awesome. Loved it. That's where we really got to see uh little Ernie Reyes Jr. do his thing, man. I mean, he was taking folk out like it were nothing, and I loved it. I loved every bit of it. The stories, some of the plot lines in here. We had the plot line with, of course, Bruce Leroy. He's the star. He's the star. He's the head, the lead of the film, and his little journey to find the true master, the one and only master that his sensei sends him on. And at the beginning of the film, and speaking of the beginning of the film, that scene, that opening scene, you see the montage, 80s montage when he's training with the opening credits, and his sensei is shooting arrows at him, and he is dodging them and all this other stuff. And that one arrow that he turns around and he just chops it, just in slow motion. Once again, let's not forget, no CGI, no visual effects. Yes, people, he did that for real. That was a actual stunt in the film. Now they had to do several takes, of course. I think it took 2 hours to film it, but he pulled it off. They shot an arrow at him, and he quickly turned around and chopped it in half in midair. A beast. That was real. No stunt double, no nothing. That was actually him. And so that was cool. But that journey that he goes on with the, with the belt buckle that he thought was this amulet or whatever, and trying to find the true master. And his sensei sends him on his journey, but we all find out that it was within him. It was within him the whole time. And I thought that was, I didn't think of it then. 6 years old, I didn't know what life was. I didn't know what messaging was all about. But now when you think back, people around my age I'm talking to here, now you think back, you're like, man, this is some deep stuff here that that they're touching in on. And it was cool, man. It's really touching and cool how it's a story of self-discovery and looking within yourself for strength, looking within yourself to rise up against whatever it is that's holding you down. I think that is an awesome message that was displayed in this film. Didn't understand it in 1985, but I understand it now, and it makes me appreciate it even more. The love story between Bruce Leroy and Laura, I thought was played out pretty well. It didn't feel cheap to me. In some movies where, our hero meets this woman and they fall in love 3 hours later, and there's no connection there. There's no chemistry there. Nothing they go through is believable, to make you believe that they fell in love and became this loving couple or something. I, I hate movies like that. I really do, and they still do it to this day in film. I'm supposed to believe that you fell in love with this person. Nah. No. But I liked how this kind of progressed throughout the film because Bruce Leroy, he's a virgin. He never been with a woman. He never kissed a woman. He doesn't know how to talk to women. He doesn't know what to do. And Laura, played by Vanity, who, many believe, me in that camp, was the most beautiful woman in the world in 1985. And what would she want with me? Why would she want me? Why would she want to talk to me? But she saw something in him that she liked and she was pursuing him, and she saw that he wanted to pursue her, but he's kind of timid. He's a timid guy. And so her efforts on trying to break through and get to him was I thought that was cute and fun, and it was a nice journey throughout the film. To get to the point where it's earned when they have that kiss at the end of the movie. It's earned. And that's why I appreciate it so much. The story between Bruce Leroy and his family, the family connection, the strength of the family, him being the, how do I put it? I was about to say next of kin, but I ain't nobody died here. But you know what I'm saying? He's the heir apparent, I guess you could say, in his family as being the oldest of the children, and his dad owning this pizza parlor in Harlem, or is it Brooklyn? I don't know why I'm blanking on that part, but in New York or whatever. But and nobody really giving it a chance. They're struggling, but he's pressing forward on trying to build this restaurant and wanting his son to take the mantle when he's gone. When he's tired, when something to leave behind to his kids. And Bruce Leroy is on his other mission. He's walking a different path. You know what I'm saying? So it's like a struggle there with the family. Cool little story there. We've seen it a million times before, of course. This ain't everything I'm listing here is not original. It's just I liked how it was played out in this film. The big brother, little brother story, with Bruce Leroy and Richie. That I'm really connected with Richie because I'm the little brother. My big brother was Bruce Leroy to me. So it's we never beefed like that, but it was cool to kind of see that big brother little brother dynamic play out on the screen. And all of this, I probably should have started off with this. All of this, selfishly, is black. This is all black, and that helped so much, because like I said, we've seen these tropes in movies before. Nothing new. The popcorn is stale. We've seen this movie before, but to see it in color, all pun intended there, and to see it with these black folks is something to inspire by. That's what makes Black Panther such a phenomenon when it came out, to actually see a black superhero, a black superhero that can stand with Iron Man and Thor and Captain America and be on the same level as them. Not just a sidekick, not just a friend of the hero or whatever. No, to be on that level. And to have a movie like this on the level it's amazing. Even though it's not the greatest of movies in the grand scheme of it all in comparisons to The Godfather or Lawrence of Arabia, but it is still an amazing film. The final showdown between Bruce Leroy and Sho'nuff. The fact that they did it in a way where Bruce Leroy didn't stand a chance in hell, not a snowball's chance in hell, of defeating Sho'nuff without the glow. And then you have Sho'nuff get the glow first. He has the red glow. And it's like, man, he really doesn't stand a chance. He's really going to die. And, bruh, that beatdown was something brutal. And the end result, when it finally clicked in Bruce Leroy's head that he was the master, and he came about after he was being dunked in that water, and he sure enough pulled his head out for one last time, and the slow motion of it all, and the water is coming off of his head, and Bruce Leroy just stands there like, I got you now. And he was like, who's your master? Who's the master? And I am. And he caught Sho'nuff fist and started to glow gold. Man, I remember, I don't know why it just came to me while recording, but yes, I did go to the theater to see it, because now I'm starting to remember what took place in that theater. There was cheering in that theater when he caught his fist. One of the first interactive experiences I had in a theater. I should have remembered this earlier, but it's fine. But that was the first time I heard cheering from multiple people in the theater when Bruce Leroy caught his fist and started to glow. And man, proceeded to whip Shownuff's butt in that warehouse. Golden, man. Golden. I mean, once again, earned, because we've been waiting the whole movie. At no point did we see Bruce Leroy actually fight. He was non-violent. He he was Martin throughout the whole movie until the end. He turned to Malcolm, and that's where it was such an enjoyable experience, because we didn't get to see him do all of his tricks and his flips and his kicks and his punches throughout the film, and none of it really had an impact at the end because we've seen it. No, they held it until the very end when it was time to strike, and that was the unleashing of this glow. Oh my God. Perfection. It was it was the most joyous experience, still is. I got tears running down my face now. That's right. I ain't ashamed to say it. I love this movie. Hands down, one of my favorite movies ever made. Ever made. This is not a guilty pleasure. This is not it's just nostalgic. I love this movie. I don't care. Come at me. Come at me if you want. This is a classic. Berry Gordy's The Last Dragon, which came out in 1985. 40 years. 40 years almost to the day. It gets a letter grade of an A. I love this movie, man. 40 years old, still holds up, still has a special place in my heart, and will always hold a special place in my heart. So, whew, man, I don't remember. I don't think I took a breath there. I don't recall the last time I breathed while talking. But that's how much I love this movie. I love this movie. I would love to know, what did you think of The Last Dragon? Where were you when you first were experienced to this beautiful piece of art? Were you around my age? Did you go to the theaters, or were you a little younger and you didn't see it until it popped up on television for like 52 weeks in a row? Or are you of this young generation who probably, and God, shame on your parents, shame on them that they didn't show you The Last Dragon? And I'm saying that out loud right now, and it just dawned on me. I don't think my children watched The Last Dragon. Oh no. Oh no. Well, shame on me. I don't recall. I gotta ask them after I finish this. I'm gonna ask them, and if they didn't, I know I did because I own it. I own it. I actually have two copies. I have a box. It came in a special edition, but I bought that, and then the regular Blu-ray I had bought. But I don't recall showing it to them. Well, guess what we watching tonight? But in any event, I want to know, what did you think of The Last Dragon? Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can also search for the show on all social media platforms. Just search for the KB Radio Network. Also, YouTube, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to subscribe to the KB Radio Network channel, and like this video, share this video, comment on this video if you don't mind. Don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to movie goodness here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me as we went back, jumped in a time machine, traveled 40 years in the past, and reviewed The Last Dragon. Everybody, I want you all to know that I love you. Continue to love everyone. And until we speak again, I am the master.